Hey guys, this is the Beardist Federalist Show, and today we have a very special episode for you. We are joined by Jay from Life First PC, and we are going to be talking about Amendment 4 today. So, first, we are going to have Mark kind of, tell us what's on the agenda today, and then we will get into it.
Oh man, I don't even have my list up for the agenda. Basically, we're going to be going over Amendment 4, the wording on that. We'll do a little bit into the history of other states that have the organizations behind this, who they are, and what they've done in the other states, the success rates they've had. We're going to get into the deceptiveness of this amendment. A lot of people have been saying, "Yeah, it's vague." Vague is one thing, but had an amazing meeting with some people yesterday that really highlighted how deceptive it is because of what they've done in other states with this. So we'll get to go into that for a bit. We'll talk with Jay about his organization and the awesome work they're doing in Florida, the obstacles they've got, challenges they've got, and victories they've had, and then how we can support his group and others like them. And so it'll be a whole session on unpacking and looking into just the terribleness that is Amendment 4 today.
Yeah, so without further ado, let's get into it. So, first, we're really just going to talk about, how truly deceptive it is. And if either one of you kind of want to go over, what is in this bill and what all is deceptive about it, feel free.
Okay, so the wording on it. So anytime a bill is put forward, uh, the writers of that have to go ahead and submit a summary, the sponsors, the signatures, and all of that. And the summary for this amendment is even longer than the amendment itself. So that's one thing that just stands out as really stark in comparison to any and every other amendment that goes on to any ballot measure. A summary is supposed to be a summary, just shorter than that, but it is larger, just because this thing is written so shortly. So let me read the the full text of the amendment so people can hear what it is, and then we can go ahead and dive into what's going on with it. So, no law shall prohibit, penalize, delay, or restrict abortion before viability or when necessary to protect the patient's health, as determined by the patient's healthcare provider. This amendment does not change the legislature's constitutional authority to require notification to a parent or guardian before a minor has an abortion. So, very short, very simple. Sounds pretty simple, straightforward, pretty flowery. But let me tell you, they have put about $14 million into legal fees just to be able to craft the wording on this. Um, it is the groups behind this being George Soros, Planned Parenthood, and the ACLU. All of them have thrown in millions on this just to get the wording right, so that they can market it and push it and get it going. Um, and there's been 9 other states that they have done this on. Um, let's see if we can get that thrown up on the screen real quick, and I'll show you guys what they are, and we can start going down through. All right, good deal. There it is. So we see Alaska, which is kind of a surprise because that's a red state mostly, um, but no ban on it there. The same group got that passed there. Colorado, same group got that passed there. District of Columbia, same group got that passed there. And these are all constitutional amendments. They're not just state laws. They put them up at the constitutional level. And this is going to be important later as we get to this. Maryland, Michigan, some devious stuff happened there, and we'll dig into that. Minnesota, then we got New Jersey, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Oregon, um, and Vermont, and that would be it. So 9 of them where these organizations have done it, and they have tried it in um, about 10 states, and the other state ended up doing a uh, shorter ban of it later. So it didn't quite go all the way through there. They got a lesser amendment passed. So of the 10, they've got 9 of them. Uh, they're getting about a 96% success rate on this anywhere they do it. And a large reason they are having that success um, is because of its deceptiveness and the simplicity and wrote that. And they did not spare any expense in drafting it. Everything on there is absolutely intentional.
So
So just looking at the wording of that, what are you guys thinking about this?
So I think something that's also crucial here when we talk about how deceptive this is that there's a lot of talk online where people say, well, Republican Supreme Court here in the state of Florida said that it's completely okay and we can pass it, but that's not what happened. The Supreme Court here just said that the amendment could go on the ballot so we can actually go and vote for it. So there's people out there pushing this narrative that Republican Supreme Court is saying that there's absolutely nothing wrong with this amendment, when in reality it was just they approved the fact they can go on the ballot for us to go out and vote either for or against it. So I think that's
Mm-hmm.
another issue that we're running into when talking to people, online or in person.
Hey Jay, do you know how they got it to even to the Supreme Court to be considered to be on the ballot? Like, what was the process they went through? If you know.
I'm not 100% certain, but I believe what happened was when they originally proposed this amendment, there was some legal stuff going on, talking specifically about the wording. When you talk about the wording and how they paid so much to get the wording right, so it eventually ended up in front of the Florida Supreme Court, and basically they said that the wording of it was okay to get onto the ballot for people to vote for it. So if I'm not mistaken, that was the process. Was they were pushing this out. There were some legal issues where Republicans here in the state were saying this is extremely deceptive. This is going to cause issues, things like that. So this group that's pushing it changed the wording. It went in front of the Supreme Court, and they said the wording that it is currently, which is what we've ended up with when we go to vote here in November, that was approved to be on the ballot. Same thing happened somewhat with Amendment 3 as well.
So they have a review process specifically to look at the wording to see if it is even if it's too vague or not. I know the Supreme Court has that, and so I guess what you're saying is the first pass at that they decided it was too vague, and so this group recrafted it a little bit more and represented it.
So I don't believe it initially ended up in front of the Supreme Court in Florida. I think what happened was there was some legal issues between the state and the groups that are pushing it. And then they had revised the language, and then that revised language ended up in front of the Supreme Court for them to then say, yes, we can allow it to be on the ballot in November.
Crazy, crazy.
Yeah. So let's go to what exactly is being done right now in Florida to help fight this, because we've currently seen Ron DeSantis taking charge on this issue, and a few others. I saw that Ron DeSantis had an event the other night. I forgot where it was. I think it was in Miami
It was in
for
Tampa.
Tampa. That's right. And Jenna Ellis had posted some pictures and videos from that, and I know he was working with Vote No on for Florida with that. And what do you guys think? Is enough being done at the moment? At least we know on Governor DeSantis's part, he's doing all he can to stop this and stand up for life. And we have quite a few other, you know, I would say smaller, representatives and people fighting this, but some of the major people like Anna Paulina Luna, who has been posting bikini pictures instead of bringing attention to this issue in her own state. Um, I believe Matt Gaetz has come out against it, at least in a comment. He hasn't made any posts.
One
By
word.
one word, Byron Donalds, Marco Rubio, they people have called their office, saying, where do you stand on Amendment 4? And of course, their aides say, oh, it's a state issue. Yet they have no problem voicing their opinion on other state issues. So, what do you guys think about that?
Yeah.
Well,
So, oh, go ahead, Mark.
yeah, I wanted to set you up, Jay, because what you're doing is important, and I want to set the frame so it highlights how just important it is. Um, uh, let's see, who was it? Just had Daniel. Well, I can't think of his RM conservative.
Hor-
Daniel Horowitz
Horowitz.
just
Horowitz.
had an interview with DeSantis's chief of staff just 2 days ago, and in that interview, the chief of staff specifically said that they are having a hard time with office holders being afraid, was his word, to speak out against this, which I find absolutely stunning when they have a state with 1 million plus GOP voters. They're afraid. That just didn't add up to me there. The other thing that he pointed out is that a lot of the normal pro life groups that we are all familiar with and know about have also been largely absent here. So a lot of the big hitters and things have just not been around. And so groups like Life First PC, which Jay is a part of, and Vote No on for Florida and organizations like that, they're doing all the heavy lifting. Like these guys, Jay is out there putting signs out, putting bumper stickers. He's getting stuff out left and right, and they're doing the heavy lifting. And it's important because uh, things like uh, Vote No on 4 in Florida did a survey across Florida, and they found that 80% of the voters that are informed on this are actually against it. So the work that Jay is doing and the groups like his is absolutely crucial, especially in the vast absence and silence that we're hearing around the whole GOP and the normal people that are up for this. So Jay, yeah, man, if you want to tell us, dude, what's happening in Florida? What is going on, man?
Yeah, so first I want to talk about how Life First came to be, and then I'll dive into a bit of what we've been up to and what we've been doing and future plans as well. So Life First PC, how we got started was the life issue is my number one issue. It's the basically if a candidate, for me personally, if a candidate is not fully pro life, I will not cast my vote for them. That is the top issue for me. Everything else is secondary, but the number one issue for me is life. I run a different Facebook group, Facebook page. It has over 20,000 followers currently. It's a defund Planned Parenthood page. That basically started out as kind of like a hobby, just trying to connect with people that have the same mind frame as me and want to fight and protect life. So I had always envisioned doing something on this issue and doing something bigger. And I've worked for other groups and organizations, and it just never felt like I was doing enough. So when Amendment 4 came to be, I was looking at the situation and the landscape and saying, back in June, May and June, I'm like, there's not a whole lot going on, and this is an extreme amendment that needs to get stopped. And luckily for me, I have a couple buddies that are consultants and are willing to work with me on this issue. So, we put a lot of work into it. We put a lot of our own money into it. And really, we're just focused on trying to get the message out to make sure that come November, this amendment is stopped. So there might be future plans beyond that, depending on the situation. But right now, our number one priority is stopping Amendment 4 here. And the biggest thing is, you mentioned the yard signs and bumper stickers. We had noticed that there wasn't any, bumper stickers or yard signs out there, and that was a void that needed to be filled. So We created these yard signs and bumper stickers. We kept it as cheap as we possibly could. It's $12 for a yard sign and $12 for bumper stickers. And the profit margin on that is extremely low. The people that are buying them, though, because we have kept them so cheap, are able to donate money as well. So that way we can take them
Awesome.
and push towards voter contact. So we've already contacted 10,000 voters here in the state of Florida.
Wow,
We're
dude.
Yeah, so and this coming week, we're going to be putting a poll out, getting collecting that survey and everything, and then we'll put that data together and put it out. So we're really pushing along. Obviously, the donations are the biggest thing that helps us because, like I said, we're eating to our own pockets right now. So any amount helps. It's lifefirstpc.com. And yeah, we're just trying to contact these voters, get in front of them, tell them just how extreme this amendment is, so that way, come November, we can stop it. Because we talked about Governor DeSantis being out there, and during the Tampa event, he said something that I think needs to be repeated over and over and over again. Is that he said if we don't stop Amendment 4 here in Florida, the pro life movement is over. Because
Mm,
we don't
yeah.
need a majority to defeat this amendment. We only need a little bit over 40%. Obviously, we want to have a bigger victory than that. But if you can't turn out just over 40% of voters to vote against an amendment this extreme, especially when you have 1 million more registered Republicans, then
Right.
there really is no pathway forward.
So I actually brought up a point the other day, and Steve Dace actually mentioned it on his segment with Daniel Horowitz on, I believe it was Wednesday. And I made the simple point that, a lot of normies out there in Florida may not be well informed. They know Donald Trump is, they know he hasn't really said much about it. They've obviously accepted that he is more, pro life. But people don't realize that this isn't just an abortion bill. And to reach those voters, that watch Fox and just vote down ballot Republican, all they need to know is this bill is backed by George Soros and it's Democrat funded, and their instinct will be got to vote against that, vote no on that, because at the end of the day, most Republicans just despise Democrats and their policies. And so if we campaign this as Soros funded and Democrat supported, then I think we have a better shot at defeating this than
Hmm.
just going out there trying to say, well, this is what it does, because a lot of people will tune out on that. Um, so
So yeah, to your point on that, there's actual statistical data to back up. That's what I didn't get to share with you yesterday. Is after that call with Sarah John, who is vote no on 4 in Florida. Um, After that session with them, she was mentioning there that they had done a survey because the question was, should we really attach Soros's name to this or not? Like, is he oversaturated? So people are like, okay, whatever, we've heard this name 1,000 times, or does it have real impact? And the surveys that they did and throughout Florida and the research that they did showed overwhelmingly that it does have an impact. People
mhm.
really do have such a distaste for him that when he's attached to anything, they abjectly, reflexively, instantly reject it. And so the data supports your theories. Like
Yeah,
it
Yeah, and
absolutely supports it.
to be honest, I didn't even have any data to back up that claim. It was just more of me
No.
thinking one day. I was like, I have a lot of family. A lot of them, they watch this show now because hugely because of me, but they do like Mark's, insight on a lot of things, and a lot of them watch Fox News, and they mention George Soros all the time. And so I'm just thinking, if people don't just look at it as an abortion bill, then maybe we can get somewhere. But also, I think Trump he has a real opportunity here to
Yeah.
take a stand, but also still come off pro life, because what he's doing now is he's trying to make his tent bigger, and he's shifting it, and he's losing a lot of conservatives.
Hmm.
Now, a lot of Republicans, conservatives, even independents out there are looking for that one reason to vote for Trump. And he would go a long way in a lot of people's minds if he just came out and said, look, I'm pro choice. I've said that many times before, but this bill isn't just an abortion bill. It's radical. This is what the extreme left wants to do. They want to, kill babies up until birth. And we have a duty to stop that and to stand up for life. Obviously, he still supports the abortion pill, which I think is terrible. It's, responsible for 67% of all abortions last year, which I believe that
Hmm.
number is, even 67%, that's still about 600,000 babies. And of
Yeah,
course, that number has gone up even more since Roe was overturned. And I feel like if this happens in Florida, which is the conservative, you know, capital right now, then we're doomed. And of course, it's not just happening in Florida. So we have a duty to do everything in our power to stop this in November.
yeah, and I think to your point, when we talk about politicians and where they stand, I think the biggest problem, biggest concern of mine is that if a politician is elected running off of this platform that we're talking about, where they're basically afraid to talk about the pro life issue and stand up for life, if we have Republicans that keep getting elected while running away from this issue, we will never be able to actually change the topic and change the narrative because everyone's going to be afraid to talk about it, right? For me, myself, I worked in 2016 with the RPOF, and one of the biggest reasons why I supported Trump and was able to vote for him was because in 2016 he said, "I will be a pro-life president." To where now there's such a major shift that I think a lot of people are worried about this topic. But when you look across the nation, especially in 22, where there was a lot of defeats in Florida, Georgia, Iowa, and Ohio, all four governors won in pretty decent by pretty decent margins. And the biggest thing that they all had in common was that they had signed pro-life bills into law before their reelection. So I think that to me is evidence that there is a need for pro-life candidates and pro-life politicians, and that they can win these major races by being pro-life.
Absolutely. And I also think, overwhelmingly, I think that most people in this country are pro life to an extent. Now, some may think a heartbeat bill is too much or 15 weeks, but typically anytime after 15 weeks, majority of people think that abortions should not happen unless, the life of the mother is at risk. And Mark brought up last week how, if you apply federalism on a just normal basis, then that would be the only instance that it should occur. Now, I think that Trump, he can't just run on being a pro life president because he overturned Roe v. Wade or was, a help in that, and then be silent on this issue. It essentially cancels out the entire thing. And so I think a lot of Republicans now really need to, talk to him and be like, look, this is how you can get more people in the middle without sacrificing people on the right, because
Yeah.
ultimately you need them to win. And
Yeah. It's about so
it's
much
really
more
tough.
than just abortion. It impacts so much. Matter of fact, Zach, if you want to share my screen real quick, um, I want to dive in a little bit on the wording here and just talk up a little bit about what these organizations. So it's important that you guys remember three things. So one, George Soros. Okay. Two is Planned Parenthood. and we'll get to the importance of that as well. And the ACLU, what the ACLU has done with this in other states is absolutely horrifying. So let's start with the fact that this is a constitutional amendment. Okay, so it supersedes any Florida law. Um, so that last line, and that's how incredibly deceptive that is. So just keep in mind that the Constitution supersedes their law, regular state law, a legislative law. Let's put it that way. So we'll start with that, and then we'll see how bad this gets. So no law shall prohibit, penalize, or delay or restrict abortion. In Michigan, they had this exact same thing there on their constitution because of these groups. And the ACLU sued the state of Michigan because those that are wanting abortions were saying that because the state was not helping fund them, it was delaying their abortions. And the Supreme Court, this Michigan Supreme Court, agreed with that. So now in Michigan, because of that word, has state funded abortions. Um, like so, those guys. When I say they put millions into selecting these words, this is what they had in mind. Like this is how deceptive and evil this truly is. So now taxpayers, you, me, working, our money goes to killing babies in Michigan. Like disgusting, because of one word put into that, and that's why they don't want to define these things. That's why they're putting these things in and giving it no definition at all. So, or that word is going to come up in here a few times, and the power of that word should not be like dismissed whatsoever. So, no law shall prohibit, penalize, delay. All right, we already see how they're looking at that. And any law that could penalize that is broad, and what that means. Or, so we don't even need these. Let's just forget that. Or restrict abortion. What does restrict mean? Like if delay means we can go ahead and force taxpayers to fund abortions, especially when there's no definition of a liability or viability. Um, like there's no definitions, and they've used these words in other states to do everything imaginable to this. So, what does the word restrict mean? How far can they go with that? Is any law, any exception, or any funding considered, or a lack of funding considered a restriction? And so, it's not that they could do these things; it's that they have done these things in other states with these words. That's absolutely how horribly evil it is. So, or so restrict before viability. The word "or" throws out everything here and introduces this. So even if you could define the word viability, the word "or" negates all of this, because now you can say "or" when it's necessary to protect the patient's health.
which
What? How are we defining patient's health? Is
Well,
it
that's what
mental
I was
health?
going to ask Mark. Is that usually when this stuff comes along, it says protect the patient's life. Now they're changing it to patient's health. And I was in a space the other day, and Gene had mentioned that, and he was like, "What is health? What is the definition of health? Like, is it they have a broken arm, and if they go through with giving birth, it'll might mess something up? Is it what is the definition of that?" And I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is how deceptive this is that they're not defining these topics.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the ACLU, again, it's so important to know who's behind this stuff. The ACLU in Minnesota sued the state again to help this extend as far as mental health. And even that is not clearly defined. Like what levels of mental health? Is it just stress?
Right.
Yeah.
And so they have used these words to do that. So when you hear the pushback about, the wording's fine, it's all good. We know what these things mean. No, you don't. And the reason you don't is because you're not looking at where this has been used before and how it's been used before. And so it just gets worse the farther we go.
Well,
As Sure, go ahead, Jay.
I was just going to touch on one more thing when we talk about the health situation is like if we're talking about a mother that has already given birth and let's say they had postpartum depression, from the first birth, could they then go in and say, "Hey, I had postpartum depression when I first gave birth. I'm scared that it's going to happen again, and now I want to abort my baby." So
Yeah,
that's something
PTSD.
that's yeah,
Hmm.
that's really dangerous.
Yep. Um, yeah. So you've absolutely got stuff like that, and then determined by the patient's healthcare provider. What is a healthcare provider? Like how is that determined, defined? Because is it a nurse? Can a nurse do this? Can a chiropractor do this? I know that's absurd, but it doesn't define it. And the fact is, because of the wording of this and the way it's set up, you could have clinics of all sorts on any corner in the state, and the people working there. This does not establish any kind of standard for medical training or services that is defined as a healthcare provider. And so, who's doing that? What kind of requirements are for that? Even oversight as far as the safety of the mother. So let's just say this passes and women are going in to get abortions, and they're in 13 weeks, 14 weeks, and they go to a pop up clinic that does not have this well defined. Um, and the reason they don't have to well define it, because if you do well define it, you might be restricting abortion, right? So we don't need to well define that, because if we do, we're going to be restricting it. But now we go in there and have someone not trained in this, not qualified for this, not experienced in this, doing surgery on women. This has the potential for catastrophic damage just to women that even support abortion. Um, it's it's absolutely disgusting. Then we get to the next crazy part. This amendment does not change the legislature's constitutional authority to require notification to a parent or guardian before a minor has an abortion. Currently, Florida state law requires consent for parents, for minors, to have any kind of surgery from their parents. It's not mere notification. And this is where it gets absolutely diabolical. Again, remember, this is Constitution. So it supersedes that. So even though it says it does not change, it absolutely does, because it is the Constitution, not the state law. It replaces the consent requirement in the Florida state law with the notification requirement. So they are inserting themselves between a parent's right to parent their children. Um, and they have done this in those other states. And so when people talk about what this could do, that is terrifying enough. But you don't even have to do that. You can just look at what they've actually done, and it's disgusting. It's absolutely horrible. But yeah, I just wanted to get to that wording of that and break that down and show that up. What do you guys think about this? Like these words, now that you look at them a little bit differently, uh, it's crazy what they can entail and what they have entailed.
You want to take this one, Jay?
Yeah, I think the biggest point, like we were talking about, the health of the mother, and who's going to be able to refer for an abortion. That's something that's obviously extreme. And then the parental consent portion of it is just insane. I mean, we've talked a lot about different politicians around the country and where they stand. When you look at what happened in Virginia, for example, for the Youngkin campaign, that was going to be a really close race. And then McAuliffe came out during the debate and said, this kids belong to us, not to you. And this is a
Yeah.
situation that is basically mirroring that. It's basically the government stepping in and saying, well, the government has rule over your kids, you don't. And that's something that's setting a dangerous precedent here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because, um, well, two things on that exact point. One, like that is classic Marxism. I mean, you look at China and Venezuela, parents do not have any right to their children whatsoever. The state
Mhm.
absolutely owns their kids. It's outright, um, and so it is classic. Marxism itself targets uh, Western institutions and values, things like the family, is a prime target to tear down. They use the tool of socialism to do that. A lot of people think socialism is about the owning the means of production and involving that. It's not what Marx and Lenin and Trotsky and others wrote about. Its function. Its function is to target Western institutions, to overthrow them, to tear them down, so that it can transition into communism. Uh, communists want to go all the way to communism. Socialists want to stay in that authoritarian, totalitarian socialism construct there, where the state is supreme. It replaces religion, it replaces family, it replaces education, it replaces everything. And they want to control all of that. And anything they can't control, they will ban. And so this is just codified that which we have seen throughout history and other places. And they are continuously moving into that. It's an excellent point.
Yeah, you guys said it. I can't really say it better than that. I was going through trying to find a post from Mark actually, but I couldn't find it. But yeah, basically, equating everything to Marxism and how, you know, the US right now is slowly moving in that direction. Um, you probably know which post I'm talking about, where you equated uh, family, freedom of, religion, like church, and the direction
Mm-hmm.
that we're going in. And I think we have to beat this bill. Like, nothing else matters right now. Obviously, the border matters, and I want Kamala to go down. But if Trump truly is a changed man from that assassination attempt, I would hope that he would stand up for life, and he knows the importance of life and how every person deserves to live.
Mm-hmm.
And,
It's fundamental. It's like
killing
it's the
it's a fundamental right. And
inalienable right.
yeah, I mean, we've had the talk before of when you forfeit those rights, but every person deserves to live, and
Mm-hmm.
we need to remind him of that. The problem where we are now is the only way that we can potentially remind him is him losing and a socialist take over. So it's kind of a double-edged sword where we're going to get stabbed either way. But
Well,
yeah.
I think there's a second option here, and it's defeating this amendment, right? And then taking it across the nation. We see there's stuff going on in Arizona, Minnesota, and now Missouri, to where
Yeah.
they're all trying to push the same language. I think if
Yep.
if we're able to defeat this in Florida, and then hopefully in Missouri and Arizona and Minnesota, I think that will also be a signal and say like, hey, pro-life movement and pro-life voters are strong voters. They're going to turn out to vote against stuff like this, and it's someone that you need to have on your side. Obviously, it
Yeah.
would suck if it was after the election, but hopefully that would be enough that if he does get elected again, that he could say, okay, well, this is something that needs to happen in terms of bringing these pro-life groups into the fold and pushing and promoting more pro-life laws.
Yeah. I mean, even if it's not about like abortion specifically, I mean, we have Soros, who is a self-avowed socialist. So he's funding this because he wants to advance socialism. All right. He makes no bones about it. It's not a subtle thing. He's not shy about it. He's bold about it. Tim Walz embraces it. He was like, "Hey, well, one man's socialism is another man's liberty," right? So he was embracing that openly. You have Bernie Sanders and others. So the Democrat Party is all about this. So Soros being into that, Planned Parenthood, they have a very, very invested interest in having these things be as late term as possible because they make millions off selling the body parts. That's just horrifically disgusting. But they want a return on an investment. And so they are fighting for this to get that. The ACLU, we've seen what they're doing. They are absolutely pushing for state funded, taxpayer funded abortions across the board. And so they are the ones using these very precisely chosen words to advance this. And so it doesn't even have to be about abortion per se. It is like Zach pointed out so well, it is a Democrat socialist bill, and it's designed to interfere with a parent's ability to parent. It's designed to put women at risk because you don't define healthcare providers and you can put them in subpar care. Or you could, I mean, you're basically bringing the hangers back at this point with that kind of wording. And um, so even pro-choice people have a lot of reason to be against this. It's designed to have endless legal battles as these words and terminologies are tried to be hashed out and defined in the courts. So the expense to the taxpayer is going to be through the roof for that. So even if you don't touch on abortion itself, everything else with this bill is horrifically disgusting and incredibly deceptive on purpose. They spent this money and ran it through focus groups, ran it through all sorts of things just to narrow this down and fine tune it so that they can use these words later to advance this further. And so, yeah, it even, I mean, we don't even have to talk about the word abortion when addressing how bad this is. It is a Democrat socialist bill designed to upset and overthrow Western institutions, specifically the family, religion, rule of law, fundamental things like that. It's just terrible.
Yeah, and I was actually going to bring up so a lot of people that are pro-choice, they always make the same point. Well, it's always the what about isms and those 1 to 2% instances that happen. People don't realize that Florida already has those laws in place. Rape,
Mm-hmm.
incest, human trafficking, medical emergencies, fetal abnormalities, ectopic pregnancy, and trophoblastic disease.
Yep.
Those are already in place in Florida. So this whole, well, what if, your daughter was raped or whatever? Well, that's an
Exception for
exception
that.
exception
Mm-hmm.
for that already in Florida. What is the point of Amendment 4 if all of those cases are thrown out? It's common sense. So again, I think we have to just relay the message, especially to the lawmakers in Florida that are too scared to stand up. You can still support Trump, be pro choice or whatever you're turning into, and stand up for parental rights. Because if this fails in Florida, the capital of conservatism, it's going to pass in the rest of the country because these organizations funded by Soros are going to be like, we beat it in Florida. We can do this to the rest of the country.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned Arizona, Minnesota, and Missouri. I mean, obviously Missouri's a little bit different than Arizona and Minnesota, but Minnesota is a Democrat state. They will absolutely push this through. Arizona, we've seen some issues lately going on since 2020 in terms of where they stand. So there's many swing states like this that they could push this through, if we don't stop it here, because this has to be a signal to them, that they're not going to be able to just dump millions and millions of dollars into a state and get stuff like this passed. If it does end up passing here, they will have free range to go to any state that they want to, and push it through. So it has to stop here.
Yeah, there's to add on top of that too. There's one reason why Florida is so targeted, and it's because of the success that DeSantis and the Florida GOP has had there in turning that state and flipping that state. If they can show that it works there, they can prove that it will work anywhere. And conversely, additionally, um, what that does to conservatism, like people asked me on X the other day, you're a Federalist. Why do you care about what's going on in Florida? And I pointed to the other states and I was like, look, this is coming everywhere. So it is going to come to my state in Alabama. It will be here. It's just a matter of time. And it will be the same groups with the same wording. And so I'm invested in protecting Alabama uh, by trying to stop it in Florida and stop it in Missouri and stop it elsewhere. Because if we can figure out how to stop it in these places, we can protect ourselves here. And so, yeah, I have a vested interest in this personally. Um, and the other thing I wanted to point out is one of the pushbacks that you'll hear is that late term abortions aren't a thing in this country, that they don't happen, which is absolutely a lie. We had back in February of 2019, there was, everyone seems to forget this. We had doctors, OBGYNs testifying before Congress, like Dr. Levatino. And he was sharing how he had to perform multiple late term abortions, not to save a mother's life. They were elective. Um, and so he described how that went. He brought the tools before Congress to show this is what I do with this one. This is what I had to do with this one. This is what came out. And it was absolutely gut wrenching. He was talking about going in there and just pulling a leg off from a baby that can feel things, right? And then pulling another leg off and setting a pile there. And he has to do the pile of these body parts that he's slowly tearing off a living human that can feel things, um, because he has to count for all the pieces. And so it's just absolutely disgusting. So the fact that the term abortions do happen is a matter of congressional record. It's not,
So, Mark, I was actually going to bring up. I just kind of looked that up, and granted, this isn't perfect. This is from Grok. So, the definition of late term is 21 weeks of gestation, so around 21 weeks or so. Now, from KFF data, it indicates that abortions after 21 weeks represent about 1% of all abortions in the US. Now, in 2023, there were approximately
yeah,
1,026,700 abortions. Now, if you apply that 1% to that number, that is 10,267 abortions after 21 weeks.
man.
This is just crazy.
Well,
And
Every year, too. It's every year.
we can
Yeah.
even go further back than 2019. I don't know if y'all remember Kermit Gosnell. I think that was in
Yes.
2009. But I mean, he was practicing late term abortion for decades until people and mothers, actual mothers, were dying as well from these late term abortions. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
people understand just how dangerous they are, not just to the baby itself, but the mother, and putting them at risk. And he was doing this for decades before he was caught, and it was only because a mother had died that he ended up getting caught. But they were going in and doing these inspections that they were not doing their due diligence, to stop it, and they countless and countless of babies were murdered, because they were basically being born and then being tossed aside, to the point where they're still alive for 24 hours until they basically die in this abortion clinic. So It actually does happen. It doesn't matter the percentage that happens. It's a actual thing. And my whole thing when people come back to me with this is they always say, "Oh, like it doesn't happen," and the 1%'s not really a thing. Blah blah blah. Well, with most of the abortions that take place in terms of rape, incest, and the life of the mother are typically around 1%. So when they come to me and say, "Oh, that 1%, it's so insignificant to the rest of these abortions that are happening," well, I can turn around and say the same thing about the 1% of these abortions that are happening, and now we're at a stalemate here. So it's just beyond crazy to me.
Even if you were to do 1% of that 1%, that is still too many. So, I mean, it, you could apply any number you want, but that's still, 10, 20, 100. That's still too many babies that should not be getting butchered or killed because of, either harvesting of organs or because the mother doesn't want to be pregnant anymore. It's just terrible. And yeah.
Yeah, and one of the topics that Mark had brought up before when we were talking about selling these baby parts and everything is I don't know if y'all seen the news a couple weeks ago, but in California when Kamala was the district attorney there, she sealed these records of Planned Parenthood getting caught selling baby parts, and it just got opened up. I think it was sealed for like 9 years or something like that, and it just got opened up to where they were allowed to actually put this information out. So there's plenty of evidence. All someone has to do is just do a quick Google search, and they'll find evidence of the late term abortions and Planned Parenthood selling these body
And
parts.
guess who are some of her biggest funders? George Soros, Planned
Planned
Parenthood,
Parenthood.
ACLU.
Yep.
I just want to piggyback off that. There's another organization out there that did some work on that issue. It's called Choice42
Hmm.
dot com.
Good group.
They have a video out there on YouTube. Now, I'm not going to bring it up right now because it's, I think, a 4 or 5 minute long video, but I'll probably share it again later on X. But it's an animated video of these kids essentially getting aborted so that their organs can either go to research, vaccines, or other various things. And I'm not going to lie, even as a man, that brought me to tears.
Hmm.
And I think the majority of the country thinks this way, and it's our duty, to get this message out, inform people, and defeat this bill. But
Yeah. So to that
do you
end,
guys
Jay,
have?
yeah, Jay, man, tell us a little bit more about what Life First has been doing, and a little bit of your roadmap, and then we'll wrap it up with
Yeah.
how
How can
viewers
we help?
can support you. Yeah.
Yeah, so the biggest thing that we've been doing so far is we've been sending text messages out, reaching voters directly. Obviously, we have the yard signs and bumper stickers as well. So we're just trying to reach as many voters that we possibly can. The reason why we're so focused on text messaging right now is A, it's the cheapest option. Like I said, we're eating into our own funds to pay for this. So it's the cheapest option for us to send these text messages. If at some point we're able to, bring in a decent amount of funds, we do plan on doing Spanish radio, in particularly in Miami and in the Tampa Bay area. And then if we really are able to, then we'll put a TV spot out. But that's best case scenario. So right now we're really focused on sending these text messages because they're cheap, they're effective. They have a 97% open rate. So out of 100 people, you send out to 100 people, and 97 people are going to open that message. So
Nice.
that is something that it's really key to us is to make sure that they're actually seeing the message that we're delivering. Um, the second thing I mentioned before is we will be putting out a poll this week, and once we get those results and everything, we'll put it together and share it with everyone. And in that poll itself, we will be doing message testing. So we talked about George Soros, for example. That is a question that we're going to be talking about. And so we're just trying to reach as many voters as possible, collect as much data as we possibly can, because right now we're mostly in the fundraising phase of things. And then once we get to the point where people are actually going out to vote, which is typically about 15 days before Election Day here in Florida, we will be doing GOTV. So basically saying, like, hey, you indicated to us that you're against this amendment. We need you to go out and vote. This is your polling location. And I think that's something that's really important, is because a lot of people, even if they, are good intention and they want to go vote, a lot of times they're like, well, I don't know where my polling location is. I don't really feel like going out, or maybe they're not as motivated. So we have to make sure we're getting the message in front of them. So Life First PC is really focused on making sure that we have the right message crafted, and then we drive them out to actually go vote. So we plan to hit, again, this is based off of how much we're able to raise, but we plan to hit at least 1 million voters before Election Day via text
Nice.
message. And then again, if we're able to, Spanish radio, and then a TV spot as well.
Yeah, I'm actually
Awesome.
going to put this up on the screen right now, and we can lifefirstpc.com. All you got to do is go to contribute now and show your support.
So, yeah, I want to point out as well, Ballotpedia is an awesome resource on doing research on various organizations and groups and everything happening in election things. And they have this sentence on the amendment for page on Ballotpedia. 5 committees have registered to oppose the initiative. One of them listed on this page is Life First PC. So if anyone's questioning the authenticity and credibility of this organization, they are one of the very few that is actually registered within the state to collect funds and to do this. One quick question, Jay: is there a mechanism where people can reach out to you guys to volunteer to help with what's going on?
Yeah, so if anyone's interested, we have lifefirstpack@gmail.com. You can shoot us an email, or on the website itself, we have a form that you can fill out for us to get your information, and then we can reach out to you and chat about potentially volunteering. What we are thinking is, as we ramp up, when we're talking about 1 million text messages, a lot of text messages to send, because this is not opted in data. We have to have someone that's actually there pressing the button to send the text message. So,
Mm-hmm.
we have 4 or 5 people that are willing to do it, and sit there and hit the button and send out these texts. It makes everything a lot easier on us. So that way we're not trying to send out 1 million messages ourselves. So that'll be coming as we ramp up, and hopefully we bring more funds in. So yeah, we're really excited about this. The 2 people that are helping me, it's it's a passion project and a passion victory for us. It's more so, like you said, we're registered in the state solely so that we can defeat this amendment, and we're eating into our own funds right now and chipping away. But at some point, we have to make sure that we're able to send out these messages, and the only way we can do that
Mm-hmm.
is if people help out and donate.
Good deal. Well, Jay, man, you have been our first guest on the show, dude, and
Yeah.
what a way to launch it off. Been an honor to have you on here, and thank you for the work you're doing, dude. It's invaluable. Like that page said, there's only 5 real organizations that have shown up to do this, and you are one of them. And so, thank you for the work you're doing, and
No, I want
whatever we
to
can do to help.
thank you both. Obviously, one, you guys have been helping out on Twitter and, well, X. I can't call it X. I don't know
It,
why.
Yeah,
it's
same.
I'm
it's
stuck
always
on
going to be
Twitter.
Twitter.
But I appreciate y'all, helping out on Twitter and helping out here and allowing me to join y'all. I tried to grow out some, beard for the last week,
You
but
qualify, dude. It
Well,
worked.
it was on such short notice. We were actually going to mail you a fake beard to put on. Um, we actually thought about doing that with some of our guests. But
I
yeah,
actually would have worn it. So it takes me. Unfortunately, it's not hockey season. I grow a pretty decent beard during hockey season and during the playoffs, but that's a couple more months away. But so I try to grow in as much as I could before the podcast.
You rocked it, dude. You rocked it. But,
yeah.
to
So
our
I
viewers,
guess we're
thank you. Yeah, thank you for tuning in and watching. Please do what you can to reach out and support groups like Life First PC. As you saw, there's only 5 of them out there, and like the chief of staff for Governor DeSantis's entire office has said, it's been hardly anybody showing up to fight this. Um, and so we need all hands on deck. Please support Life First PC, and the other groups like them. They are finding gaps where others are letting things slip and filling in those gaps because they can move quickly. So do what you can, and thank you for tuning in and watching us. We don't take your viewership lightly. We're really, truly grateful.
Yeah, and
Until next time.
uh, yeah, and so next week Frost will be back from vacation,
Yeah.
and hopefully our production will be a little bit better by then. If you've noticed, this week we have a completely new setup because Frost was our production guy, and so I'm having to learn a little bit. Um, but hopefully you guys like it, and yeah, so we will see you guys next week. All right, peace out,
Sounds
guys.
good.
Thanks again.
Later.
Bye.